Welcome back to the Julian J. Franco Show. I have somebody who I am so excited to introduce everyone to, John Marshall Jones. I call him Marshall, but you got to know him for a little while in order to do that. So today's guest is a superstar actor, entrepreneur, social activist, mentor, and like I said, a friend of mine. You've seen him on Smart Guy, Dexter, Bosch, Grand Hotel, Malcolm in the Middle, The Morning Show, and much more. And seriously, check him out. Look at his resume. He's been a working actor for so long, and he continues to work. And what I really find so funny is I actually met him at Gold's Gym, the mecca of bodybuilding. We were getting trained, and I went up to you, I spoke to you, and you gave me the light of day. And people don't know this, you also gave me Mastering the Audition as well, because before that, I wanted to buy it, but it was sold out on Amazon. And you actually said, okay, don't worry about it. When will you be here again? And then you brought me a copy of Mastering the Audition. And that was something that resonated so well with me. You didn't charge me. And I just want to ask you, number one, why did you give me the time of day? Number two, why did you go above and beyond to give me your CD of Mastering the Audition? And what allows you to be a superstar actor? You are a celebrity. I know you never really claim that, but you are, but you don't seem to have the ego that most celebrities do.
That's a multi-pronged question. So just starting off, I mean, I had an experience a few years ago. I met Morgan Freeman coming out of an establishment in LA. And, you know, I was a young actor at the time. And really, all I wanted to do was to say thank you, you know, for creating a path and opening for, you know, the next generation to come through. And so, you know, I got my nerve up and, you know, walked up to him, you know, said thank you. And he looked at me, he said, well, you're welcome. What's your name? And I can't even express the continuing effect that had and still has on me, that Morgan Freeman would take the time to even be interested in who I was. And I made a decision that day, because it was such a profound experience, that whenever somebody came up to me, that I would take the time to take an interest in who they are. And at the very least, you know, ask your name and what are you up to, and, you know, and acknowledge the value of your humanity. And so it just kind of happened that that where you were coming from was, you know, from the space of not only a fan, but also a fellow actor. And you know, and that I had something, or have something, for my fellow actors that basically explains that the audition is actually the key to the kingdom. So it's great to be a great actor, but if you don't become a great auditioner, you could be a great actor your whole career and nobody gets to see it. And trust me, here in Hollywood, that happens all the time. I have friends that are tremendous actors that can't get any shine in Hollywood. And part of it has to do with being really proficient and conscious of what the audition is. So the project is called Mastering the Audition. And I've really been thinking about doing I don't know, not a reboot, but updating Mastering the Audition for the audience of 2020, because things have changed quite a bit since over the last 5 years even. There used to be that every show would wrap up in 1 hour or in a half an hour, you know, and then you'd have to wait a week for that next episode to come on. But when Netflix and Hulu and everybody started streaming, people started wanting to watch more than one show at a time, almost like you're watching a movie. right? So, you want to sit down and see Game of Thrones, you might not want to wait another week to see what the next episode is. You want that episode right now. And so those roles that would have just been in one episode, and then it wraps itself up and you go to the next episode. Now those roles will go for 5, 6, 8, 10 episodes because that's how people like to watch. And so that kind of changed the landscape of of what your audition means, because one audition can mean now 8 to 10 checks, as opposed to one auditioning meaning just one check. And so it's increased everything. And on top of that, this last year, especially during coronavirus, streaming has increased by over 100%.
Oof.
So the actual amount of content that's being consumed has doubled. And so more content needs to be created. And we're going to see that in the outlying years. So the content consumption doubles in 2020, but the next season of making content to feed that new demand isn't until 2021, right? So we're going to see the increase in content production in 2021 and going forward, because my assumption is that once people get used to the idea of consuming content the way that we've been doing it, they're not going to go back, right?
No, of course not.
People are going to get older over the next few years. They're not going to go, that older group is not going to go out as much. It's one of the largest groups in the United States, which is the baby boomers. People who didn't have cable now have cable. You've got, you can get TV through YouTube, and then on there you can sign up for HBO, Showtime, whatever else it is that you want. So it's not like you got to have the cable guy come in and put up a box and, and then something goes wrong and you got to call it. You don't have to do any of that. It's on YouTube now. It's on
Just type in the title, whatever you want to watch.
Yeah, and it comes with your television. So my niece just got a new smart TV, and she asked me, what carrier she should get. And I said, well, wait a second. Before you get anything, turn on your TV and see what apps are already on the TV. And then if you're happy with a selection of apps that are already on your TV, then you don't have to get anything.
There's no need.
You just pay for those apps and you're done. So the technology of everything has changed tremendously. And so from an actor's point of view, there's more opportunity now than there ever was. And so auditioning is more important than it ever was if this is a career that you want to make. And so that's what Mastering the Audition was all about.
And I am a big fan of Mastering the Audition. I probably saw it and listened to it 3 times. I wasn't able to see it. You gave me the CD, so I listened to it 3 times. And one thing that I really admire about you is the fact that you do not hoard your information. You want to share it. And not only, people can see it, well, he's doing it because it's a commercial product that he wants to sell, which I love about you, because you've noticed, when you were on a hit show that was doing beautifully internationally, you couldn't go anywhere and not be recognized. And you're just like, okay, but my paycheck isn't reflecting all this work. So what should I do? I need to take ownership. And that's one avenue that you went in. So you did that. And one thing too, you also, and this is for people, and a lot of people don't know this because you never advertised it, you never really promoted it, but for your the Kappa University, right? Those young individuals, those artists, you would take time out of your Saturday to go and teach them your acting technique. And how much did you charge them? Absolutely nothing. So the fact that you do that, it just really shows. And that's why me personally, in my heart and my soul, I know that this gentleman that I'm speaking with today is somebody who cares about the future generations, right? Who wants to make that sort of impact. And my question to you, you're super busy. I remember texting you one day and you still got back to me. You know, you were on the set of Grand Hotel. You're like, hey man, filming. You sent me a nice little picture. And the fact that you would do that, it really meant a lot to me. So my question to you is, how do you nurture your relationships? You can be on set 12-hour days, really hectic, but how do you still keep in touch with individuals, and how do you show them, hey, I want to, I find this connection to be important?
Well, I, I think that overall, nurturing relationships is the same whether you're on set or not on
Hmm.
set. I try to get back to people as quickly as I can
Hmm.
within a reasonable amount of time. I try to return all of my messages, unless it's some kind of, multi-level marketing, they're selling me some stuff because that, we all get those.
Right.
Um, but I think though that the thing to understand about this business is that if you're in it for a long time, ups and downs come with it.
Mm.
And if you have something that's doing like this, you also have to create something in your life that does
Ooh.
that. And then you have a choice of what you're going to pay attention to, right? So you could be way up when the ups are there and way down when the downs are there. Or you can recognize that here are the things that are most important to me, and I'm going to acknowledge those, whether I'm in an up cycle or a down cycle. This will be what I use to determine my happiness.
Hmm.
And so relationships are a part of that, you don't act differently when you're up
Hmm.
than you do when you're down, because relationships need you to do this,
Hmm.
right? For there to be trust and what have you.
And have that
Um,
consistency, right?
yeah, to have that consistency. And so what I've come to is the three things that I need for happiness: bills are paid, family's healthy, I'm healthy, God is good. And so when I look to those three things, bills are paid, family healthy, I'm
Hmm.
healthy, um, then I have everything that I need.
Hmm.
So when I'm going through an upcycle, that's great. The bills are going to be paid. You hope your family's going to be healthy and you stay healthy. But when you're going through a down cycle, um, having bills paid is sometimes as much as you can ask.
Hmm.
You can't say, "Oh, I should have been on this show," or "I didn't get that audition," or "I didn't." Yeah, no, 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 no. Look, are your bills paid? You got food in the refrigerator? Listen, you're all good. Is while you're worried about all that other stuff, how's family doing? Are they healthy? Right? Do you have a healthy relationship with them? Do they understand that you are of a higher priority than any job that comes or goes? You're okay. How's your health? Are you healthy? Right? Are you taking care of yourself during the down period? Can you change your focus to, oh, well, I'm not working as much, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that I keep my spiritual health intact. I'm going to keep my mental health intact. I'm going to keep my physical health intact. And that's going to be my focus the whole time. While the world is telling me what I don't have, I can actually tell the world what I do have. And as long as I can focus on that,
Hmm.
everything's going to be all right.
I love that you set up your own foundation that comes internally and it's not externally. But even talking about the material aspect of things, I remember you were on an interview and you said something that I really, really loved. You had this house, in Hollywood on top of the hill, you had a bathtub in the back, and, you were really starting to reflect and you said, you know what? You did great, but you were about to miss it thinking you should have done better.
Correct.
And when you said that, I went, Marshall, how do you have this awareness? Because again, when you're doing so good, but you're so focused on, well, Eddie Murphy just got, this deal, and Morgan Freeman just landed this, and I should be, or I could be, shoulda, woulda, coulda. How are those three things what you just constantly like replay in your head and say, you know what? I'm not in competition with anyone else. I'm doing great?
Uh, I heard a saying many years ago that always stuck with me,
Mhm.
and it's that success is not measured by how you do in comparison with others.
Mm.
Success is measured by how you do in comparison with how well you could have done if you would have applied your very best to the situation.
Come on.
So, the first question you have to ask yourself is, did you do everything that you were supposed to do
Mm.
in order to put yourself in position to be successful? So it doesn't matter what, Eddie Murphy and Morgan Freeman are doing, because they put themselves in position to be successful. So first off, did you put yourself in position to be successful? And the second part is, what is success to you?
Mhm.
Right? Because you see one facet that you think is successful for people. So, their career is blowing up. But Michael Jackson's career blew up.
Mm.
He's not with us anymore. Whitney Houston's career blew up. She's not with us anymore. So the blowing up of your career is only one part of the development of the person.
Mhm.
And what happens oftentimes is that, especially in Hollywood, um, people tend to behave as if the only way to be successful is to be the biggest star in the room at that point. So I could go to some event, but if I'm not Will Smith, then I'm not considered successful.
Mm.
And it's like, and I just don't ascribe to that. I've been around long enough to get what success really is do you have the lifestyle um, that you can experience happiness on a daily basis, right? And whoever lives the longest, the happiest, the healthiest wins.
That's it.
So yeah, so you're going to have people always that are going to reach a higher pinnacle than you did,
Mm.
but are they going to live longer than you are? Right? Are they going to be happier than you are?
Mhm.
Because all the rest of that is stuff that other people set up. That whole thing of
Mm.
reaching a pinnacle, that all has to do with other people. That's their setup, right? What is your setup for your own happiness? And
I
for
love it.
me, bills are paid, family's healthy, I'm healthy, God is good.
That's Oh my gosh. I'm just so excited because people are going to listen to this. They're going to write those three things down, and that's going to become their philosophy. Because again, the world teaches you, if you're not Will Smith, what are you doing? You're an actor, but I haven't seen you on a billboard. You're so right. We're so binary. It's either you're this or you're nothing. But when you have those three things at your core and you're repeating to yourself daily, yeah. And Marshall, you live this, so I love that. Now, my next question for you, you've been on plenty of sets, you've worked with a lot of different individuals, and of course you do have an edge because you toured with, Second City for years, so you have that improv in your blood. You could probably, pick up on things, and you have that rapid fire wit. But my question to you is, when you're dealing with a superior on set, or somebody who has more status than you, and you kind of disagree with something, right? You're reading text, or they're giving you direction, and you're just like, this is not the way to go about it. How do you maneuver through that?
Um, Over time, what I've found is that you have to pick your battles.
Mhm, mhm.
And generally, when you win the battle, you lose the war. So you can, fight for, hey, this is my emotional truth in this scene, and it shouldn't be this way. And no, I can't do it like that. And you can do that. But
Mhm.
what you're not understanding is that while you're doing that, the director and the producer are falling behind on their day. And they have to get certain stuff done by the
Mhm.
end of the day because it goes in on a report. And then on that report, they have to tell why they didn't get stuff done. And so, like anybody, they're not going to want to take the blame if it's you that's saying, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to, you got to spend a whole lot of time with that, they're going to write your name down on the report. Well, we couldn't get the scene because we had a creative differences with actor John Marshall Jones. And that took us, through our production point at 1:30, and we weren't able to get back until 2:15. And then that caused us to run into overtime, which then is going to cost X number of dollars to pay all these Teamsters and all these electricians and all these makeup people and everybody who had to stay because you were fighting for your emotional truth. And so one of the things that's important to understand, at least in television, is that everybody's truth is just as valuable. And you are part of an overall machine that needs you to function efficiently in order for the machine to work. So when you get a direction that you don't necessarily agree with, the answer is, okay, I hadn't thought of it like that. Give me just a second. And then you go over and figure out how you can do the direction that they're asking, but still have it be truthful to you. And then you go out and do it.
I love that. I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
The whole thing has to keep moving. Everybody is the producers and executive producers are responsible to deliver a product to the studio or the network. That's their whole job. And so anything that is getting in the way of that job being done is bad for the production, bad for the executives. And like anybody else, they remember that the next time around. And Hollywood is a small town. You're going to see them again, right? So if you did well, you're going to see them again and they might hire you again. If you cost them money, they're going to remember that and they'll think twice about hiring you again.
Wow. Yeah. It's Hollywood is such a career of, relationships and how you maneuver through them. So just people hearing how you respond and, it's invaluable. But one thing that I have for you, and I just have so many questions because you have such a rich career, but other than that, it's just your mindset is what I love most about you. So just now, these are just like fun questions, just like a trivia type of thing. On the morning show, your character is Jones. My first question is like, how did that happen? Did you go and say, hey, you better call me by my name? How did that work?
No,
Yeah.
not at all. Listen, on the morning show, I was really actually kind of excited to be working with Reese Witherspoon and also working with Mimi Leader, who is one of the legends of Hollywood in terms of female director creators. So I was really happy to be there, and what I was trying to make sure of is that my performance fed what the scene needed me to do. Because the scene didn't need for me to win. The scene needed me to set a bar that was high enough to launch Reese to the next part of the story. And so I had to be conscious of that. Push her to a certain point, but you're not here to win. It's not about stopping her or getting her to stay. It's about creating the impetus for her to leave. So yeah, it was a great experience. We had a lot of fun. And for anybody who hasn't seen the morning show yet, it was in my opinion, one of the best shows on TV in 2020.
Okay.
Definitely.
So yeah, there's people obviously at home right now that need a recommendation. So that's your recommendation for today. And just out of curiosity, is there because you just spoke of this director right now, but is there like an actor or just any individual, when you see their name attached to a project and it comes in front of you, you're already like, your ears perk up and you're like, oh, this person's involved, I want to do it. Are there any people like that?
Yeah, there's actually lots of people like that.
Okay, great.
The thing that I'm doing now is I'm really focusing in on recurring roles and series regular roles.
Mm.
And so I'm not paying as much attention to the guest star, one episode kind of thing,
Mhm.
because that audition is the same audition as it is for a recurring role, but the guest star pays one check and the recurring role pays 5 to 10 checks. And so I don't have the same amount of energy that I used to have, where I'd go out for everything and, I gotta get this, and I'd be coming in strong. And now I'm more thinking about how do I place my energy in a place where it can be most effective and can help me to keep a lifestyle that I feel most comfortable with.
Beautifully said.
Um,
I definitely follow that. And just when you said at the beginning of your career, you're almost taking everything, and I recall you saying before you landed, Smart Guy, you've been on countless other auditions, and with television auditions, it can go, as you say, anywhere from 5, 6, 7 auditions, and you've done that maybe 3 or 4 times already and didn't get the role. So when it led up to Smart Guy, what gave you that persistence, that determination? Because a lot of people, when that happens, 3 back to back, like no's, the fourth one, by the time you get to the fourth, audition, you're just over it. What kept you from having that resentment or that attitude, or, just doubting yourself?
well, truth is, I did have that. I was kind of worn out by the time the Smart Guy audition came around. So I think I told you the story where I had been to the network like 3 times or 4 times in a week. And so that everybody understands, in order to get on a series, you go through a series of auditions. So you might audition first for the director, then for the producer, then for the executive producers, then for the studio, and finally for the network. So you've gone through a series of 5 auditions where they're whittling down the number of people. And right before you go into the network audition, they have you sign your contracts. And so your agent has been negotiating this contract, and let's say, to make it simple, the contract is for $20,000 an episode. And you haven't actually seen it yet, but when you get to the network, they hand you a contract that's about this thick. And they say, oh, well, the pickup is for, 20 episodes. And so in your mind, you can't help but go 20,000 times 20. That's $400,000. That's what I'm going in to audition for right now. And so to do $400,000 3 or 4 times in a week and not get any of them, you could be rightfully so, so disappointed that you just don't feel like auditioning anymore. So in the Smart Guy audition, I went in to the audition and I wasn't really feeling the script.
Mm.
And I thought that they wanted somebody a little older than I was at the time. And so I went to the casting director and I said, hey, Monica, listen, they're looking for somebody older than me, and I don't want to waste everybody's time. So why not just go home? And she looked at me, and almost kind of smiled and said, well, why don't we let them make that decision?
Mm.
And I said, all right. So I sat down and read over the script some more and saw the scene that they wanted me to read. And I said, this shit ain't funny. So I'm not going to try to make it funny, because if I go in there and try to make it funny and then I'm not funny, then they're going to blame me. So it just so happened that my son was, relatively the same age as Taj was at the time. And he was a very, very bright kid, like a standout kind of bright kid, and had problems in school, being, a light-skinned Black man, a sweet disposition, kind of nerdy in his academic pursuits. So getting all A's, kind of quiet, and kids were messing with him. And I had to tell him that, hey, listen, those kids that don't recognize the genius of who you are cannot be what you use to judge yourself. You have to look at who you are and say, hey, these are the talents that I have, and they're not normal because the normal people around me aren't doing the same things.
Mm.
So I can't come back down to their level. If they want to mess with me, they got to come up to my level. And if that means spending a little more time alone, then you got to spend a little more time alone.
Right.
Right. And so that was basically the smart guy scene. And so I went in and just kind of said it like I said it to my son, with nothing extra on it. And from what I hear, I was the first one in the room, and they said, hey, that's it. And then everybody else was just auditioning because I had already gotten the role.
And, I'm so glad how that worked out. And just now, one thing that I do like about you, it's just a contrast. We went from smart guy, Disney Channel, something that all the shareholders are going to be happy with. It's, the audience is not going to feel any type of way. It's not going to challenge their beliefs. It did in the most positive way. And I know that's one of your proudest moments for it. It's just like, the way that you were able to represent an African-American household. I just love that you did that. And I love talking to you today. But one thing that I have to mention too, you also take on roles, like in The Last Revolutionary, things that do challenge perceptions and mindsets. So you live what you preach. I love that. Now we're going to get a little silly. One of my favorite sayings is from the comedian Paul Mooney. And he says this thing where he goes, man, I'm tired. I've been black all day. And that's just one thing that I loved. When I heard that, I never forgot it. And I heard him say that when I was in high school. But when you hear that, what does that mean to you?
Oh, man, it just means that that there are certain things that are challenging just because you're black.
Mm.
Certain challenges that come up just because you're black, and that you have to learn to not react to that, because those are all distractions from where you're going.
Mm.
Other people's reactions to the color of your skin are distractions or stepping stones.
Mm.
So there are times where you're going to get shut out of an opportunity because somebody just didn't like you because you were black. That doesn't mean that there aren't other opportunities for you. It just means that that was the one you weren't supposed to participate in. And learning to be thankful
Mm.
for the ones that you're not supposed to participate in, showing themselves to you early.
Ooh.
So that you still have time and energy and focus to go and lock in to the stuff you are supposed to participate in. Them showing themselves to you early is a blessing, although it doesn't feel like it at the time.
That's so true. Again, I'm going to keep harping on this. It's your mindset more than anything, whether you're an actor, whatever you do in life, you develop John Marshall Jones mindset. I just think it's a really healthy way to approach life. Now I want to get into the relationship segment of the show. And again, you can answer these quickly or you can go into it, but I'm just curious. Again, you're on set, especially for actors, so many hours throughout the day, and you don't have to really speak for yourself personally or just others, through your experience, your stories that you've heard. But what's your opinion on dating somebody that you work with?
I generally
Mhm.
feel like there can only be one person in each relationship that has to be the center of attention,
Mm.
right? You can have two people that don't have to be the center of attention, but you can actually only have one person that has to be the center of attention. And in order to have a successful relationship, then that person has to be in a relationship with somebody who feels like they don't want to be the center of attention. They want to put all their attention on you. Now everything works. And so generally what I see with actors, And it's not all actors, because there are plenty of actor relationships that work.
Mhm.
But generally what I see is that eventually each person actually needs to be the center of attention, because that's what their personality is. And that's where conflict happens. Or each person takes a job in some remote location, and all of a sudden you're in a relationship, but you don't see the person for 6 or 9 months. And so all of that becomes very, very difficult. I personally have never had a successful dating experience where I dated somebody I was working with on set.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And that's such a good point. It's I've never heard it said like that. It's if you're both fighting for and I wouldn't necessarily call it fighting, but if you're an actor, you kind of want to be seen, right? It's because you like the attention. So if it's two of you and you're going through that, I can see where there can be like plenty of hiccups or whatnot. And now I'm gonna use this as far as the one, right? Like you've auditioned for a lot of roles, Marshall, that you probably said, oh my gosh, if I get this, this is the one. And a lot of people in the dating world, they're probably dating somebody right now and they're just saying, oh my gosh, this may be the one. And as you know, maybe 9 times out of 10, you figure out you didn't land that role or that person isn't the one for you. And since I love your mindset, how do we get over not landing the one?
Well, I would say, let me reframe that just a
Mhm.
little bit. Um, I think that you have to know what it is you want in a relationship, right? And that most of us don't, especially for men. We're looking for physical attributes. Oh, I want her to be tall and have, pretty hair, and, she got this kind of body, and, and all of that is, lasts for a short period of time.
Mm.
But what is it that you actually want as a man? What do
Mhm.
you want from a woman? What's the quality of attention? What's the quality of the experience that you want from her? Are
Mhm.
you somebody who actually really wants more of a traditional kind of relationship where she takes care of the home and you take care of stuff outside of it?
Mhm.
If that's what you want, then then it's going to be more difficult when you get into a relationship with somebody who doesn't want to do that, right? Just because she got a big booty and she got a pretty face, but she doesn't want what you want.
Right.
And so you guys are constantly going to be in conflict. Do you want to have kids, but this other person doesn't want to have kids? She doesn't want what you want. So the most important thing is, for a relationship to last, you have to pick somebody who wants what you want.
Mm.
Then you're not going to have conflicts over what you're doing, because you both want the same things. And if you don't take the time to first figure out what you want
Mhm.
in an honest way, what do you honestly want? And it doesn't matter how everybody else perceives it. If it's what you actually want,
Mhm.
then you got to start there. And if you're going to get into a relationship, my suggestion is you take the time to get past your attraction to body parts
Mm.
and try to figure out who this person is and what she wants. And if she wants the same things you want, then that's a good partner. That's a good partner for you.
I love that. I love that. And that's so truthful. Now, this is a bit personal, but Marshall, if you had to reflect on your past relationships that maybe didn't go well, it ended somehow. If there was a common denominator after you really look back at it that you can take responsibility for, what would you say that was?
I would say that that for a long time, I wasn't in the mindset where I was ready to allow somebody to love me.
Mm.
So I was willing to love, but I wasn't really willing to allow somebody to love me. I didn't really believe it, that that was possible. And so the more that someone would try to show me love, the more I would disbelieve what they were doing, the more suspicious I would become.
Ooh.
And that would play itself out in my behaviors. And those behaviors were something that I wasn't conscious of. And so I would do things that if you asked me why I did it, I couldn't really answer. And so it took some time to really come to grips with that, that the reason why I chose those people is because I already saw the exit when I came in the room. And so I was only in the room for a certain period of time and I already knew it. And the exit was all of the drama that goes along with leaving the relationship when you actually already knew that you were only there for a short period of time. And so I had to get beyond, I had to grow beyond that.
I love
And
it.
so I'm in a relationship now. It's great. She wants the same things I want. We have similar senses of humor. And so every day we wake up laughing and spend all day laughing, and
Love that.
you know, and I couldn't think of anything better.
Marshall, anybody who's with you is lucky. So we'll send this clip to her later. And as far as red flags, I think there's a lot of them that we often ignore, right? Like we see things in relationships and but we kind of ignore them or put them to the side. When you see something in your current relationship or past relationship that you don't necessarily jive with, what's your approach? Do you go head on or do you kind of ignore it and see if it phases out on its own? How do you maneuver through that?
Well, I tried not to get in too deeply. If I start seeing red flags, especially at the beginning,
Very start.
yeah, it's kind of, you know, it's a sign that, you know, this isn't a long lasting relationship. Right. And so I believe that relationships shouldn't be a whole lot of hard work. I believe that the hard work comes when you're constantly having to find compromise between two people that don't want the same things. And so that really important part of figuring out what it is you want, what do you actually want? And then choose somebody who wants what you want. And then you're not really going to see very many red flags because they want the same thing you want. If anything, what you'll see is a reflection of yourself and things that maybe you haven't come to terms with that other person is now reflecting back to you. And are you going to become accepting of those things, or are you going to change those things so that the relationship can grow for the better?
I love that. And just to wrap on the relationship segment, how do you approach disagreements, right? When something gets heated or there's some sort of argument, how do you approach that? And the reason I ask, because especially with Mastering the Audition, one thing that I really love from that is, you know, may I have this moment, please? You know how to take control, Marshall. You know how to step back. So, you know, while I was preparing for this interview, I said, this is one question I really want to ask him. I want to see what does he do when he's in that, you know, situation. So how do you diffuse that?
I try to ask myself the question and get both people to ask the question. Is this going to be important 5 years from now? Or is this just something that seems really important now and in a month we ain't even going to be talking about it? So, you know, what is this really? Is this, you know, is this really a big thing, or is this something that's a big thing for the moment? And again, if you can kind of figure that out, because a lot of times when you're in a heated discussion, it really is something about the moment, because most of the time you're not thinking 5 years down the road. You're not thinking you're not even thinking
Right now.
if you're going to be with that person 5 years. You haven't thought it through that far. You're just thinking right now. Everybody's thinking right now. It's like, hey, let's slow down. In the more mature relationships that I've been in, we would say, hey, let's take a pause. Let's come back to this tonight. We would get together in the evening. We would light a candle. We would pour a glass of wine. And then I would say, hey, listen, I know all these things are important to you. So I'm going to let you talk and I'm just going to listen. I'm not going to interrupt. I'm not going to try to justify. I'm not even going to be thinking of what I'm going to say while you're talking. I'm just going to listen. And when you're done, then I'd like to express my side to you. And I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. And then at the end of that, let's see if we can find, some common ground here. And generally, I've always found that worked. If people are willing to do that, that works really well.
Excellent. Excellent. Marshall, great all around. Before we wrap up with the final questions, this is just a bonus question for those that are still listening. You had the opportunity to work with Robin Williams. People love him. And I already know you know how blessed you've been, but I'm just curious, what was it like to be in his presence? And is there anything that you remember that stood out for you?
Yeah, Robin was one of the most giving actors that I've ever seen. And he had this thing where he wanted everybody to be happy. And he would go above and beyond the call of duty. So when we were doing Good Morning Vietnam, there was a scene where all the extras had to march, 100, 150 yards to show this big marching scene. They had an aerial crane and, all the guys had these, in full uniforms and had their rucksacks and they were packed with 40 or 50 pounds of stuff so that it wouldn't look like the, packs had paper in them. And they're walking back and forth and it was like 110, 120 degrees. And in between each take, I would go back and they had these big umbrellas for the cast. So in between each take, I would go back, get under the umbrella and try to cool off before the next take. Robin would go over to where the extras were and he would entertain them even though he didn't speak their language. So they only spoke Thai, he only spoke English, but he was able to entertain them and get them laughing and keep them engaged. And when I asked him later, it's like, what were you doing? He said, well, in a movie, everybody has to be engaged. And so if you're walking these guys back and forth and you're not giving them water and you're not giving them food, eventually they're going to look like they're not engaged anymore. So part of my job as the star of the movie is to make sure that everybody stays engaged. And each time he did it, he got bigger and bigger to me. And I felt smaller and smaller because I was only thinking about myself. And yet here he was, the star of the movie, thinking about everything. And that's something that I've always carried with me and will never forget.
And I love how this is coming full circle with the way how we met, right? At the end of the day, I was an extra at the gym, I was just an extra. I wasn't I wasn't your trainer. I wasn't your best friend. And you still took time. You said, hey, I'm working out, but come see me in 15 minutes. You let me talk. You let me, be a little fan for a little moment. And you said, don't worry about it. I'll be here tomorrow. You brought me your product free of charge. And ever since, you've been a great friend of mine. And I just truly value who you are. And I just, man, whoever's watching, I hope there's like some Hulu executive that they're coming up with a new series and they need a reoccurring individual. So Marshall, I'm going to bring you a lot of taxing work. Now we are at the part of the show where we fill it in. So I'm going to give you some prompts and you're just going to fill it in with one word. You ready?
Ready.
Okay. So being a great friend begins with
compassion.
I am very proud of
my son.
My biggest turnoff in a relationship is
phoniness.
Mine's too. Okay. Every day I have to
pray.
humans have an incredible ability to?
Empathize.
If I wasn't an actor, I'd probably be.
A salesman.
You're really good at it. Okay. Now, this is the last segment. It's called Final Word. So we want to answer this as rapidly as possible. Just summarize, condense. The biggest compliment someone can pay you is?
You did something that made my life better.
Okay. Wow. The legacy you hope to create?
Is that whatever it is that you do should be in an attempt to make the world a better place.
Amen to that. And what currently brings you the most joy?
My granddaughter, who is now 18 months old.
Oh my gosh. And when did you see her last?
In February, just before Corona hit.
Okay, good, good, good. And the last two is, what's something you wish you knew earlier that would just make your life a bit easier?
Pick my battles.
Yeah. We need to be reminded of that every day. Now, this is the last question of the show. So we fast forward, Marshall, to your last day on Earth. What would you want your final meal to be?
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
There was a place in Chicago called Trattoria Roma.
Ooh.
And the owner's name was Lilo. And when I was really going through hard times at Second City, and I mean hard times like I hadn't had $100 in my pocket for 2 months, like never had $100 at one time for a 2-month period, which meant rent wasn't paid, other bills weren't paid. I was really struggling. Lilo came over to me and he said, "Hey man, I see what you're going through. And I just want you to know, if you ever need any help, come to me." And Lilo, and that was what I needed. I didn't need anything more than that. I just needed to know I wasn't alone in the battle that I was fighting. Now, Lilo had a dish called rigatoni quattro formaggi that was like comfort food every time you ate it. Mm-hmm. And I've never been able to find it anyplace else the way Lilo did it. So my last meal would be to remind me of that day. I would have rigatoni quattro formaggi.
I love that. I love that. John Marshall Jones, this has been incredible. And I'm hungry now. That's why we got to wrap up. So now the last thing is, how can people connect with you if they have questions after listening to this interview and they just want to just thank you for all the information you shared today? How can they do that?
Well, you can come to me on IG at John Marshall Jones. Kind of pretty easy to find there. And also, you can also come to my Facebook page, John Marshall Jones. Excellent. And just reach out to me there. And, you know, if you have any questions or comments, please hit me up.
Perfect. Well, that was our episode, our first episode of January 2021. The best way to start the year is with John Marshall Jones. And hopefully, I hope many projects come up. And the first place he wants to visit is our show, because he knows. And I want you to be the first recurring guest too. So is there anything else you want to share?
Yeah, I have a new project coming out. Well, a couple new ones. There's an episode of Magnum PI that I just did that should be out around the end of January. And then I have a new series called For All Mankind, which is on Apple TV Plus, and that drops on February 19th. So if you're an Apple TV person and you liked Apollo 11 and that kind of space drama, this is the series for you. This is a really, really good piece.
Okay, excellent. So I haven't actually, well, obviously I haven't watched it, hasn't come out. So I'm going to be watching that. John Marshall Jones, you know, I love watching you, and it's incredible knowing you personally and then seeing you, you transform, and you always bring in that charismatic, forceful, just intelligent, intellectual individual. Anyways, you're just a good representation of people, and I love seeing you everywhere. And again, thank you so much for your time. on screen and behind the scenes, and we'll talk very soon. Okay.
Thanks, Julian.
All right. You take care.
Okay, you too.